I would like to welcome you again to this second session of the day. I have to tell you that there was a change in the program, and I am the moderator of this session instead of someone else. So I would like to ask you to give me just a few moments to see the program and introduce the speakers. The session is again virtualization of work, a continuation of the first session. We have three distinguished speakers again. The first one is Jose Manuel de la Torre, Senior Corporate Health and Safety Manager at Trans-Adriatic Pipeline AG, with the topic Challenges in Dealing Effectively with COVID-19. Then we have another session, another lecture from Mr. Petros Hadzidakis, Senior Legal Advisor at Vasadanis and Partners Law Firm. The topic is the law issues when working remotely, a very interesting topic again, because there are very legal issues when working from home. And again, telework by Tim Treganza, Network Manager, European Agency of Occupational Safety and Health at Work. Jose Manuel de la Torre. He's a senior manager, permitting and stakeholder management in Trans-Adriatic Pipelines. Jose is a professional with more than 20 years of experience in a variety of industries, including oil and gas, pharmas, with organizational design and implementation of quality of health and safety and environment management functions in an international environment: Mexico, Chile, Peru, Greece, Albania, Italy, and Switzerland. He has managed multi-employer project teams from concept through execution, including design, construction, commissioning, and operation. He has also been member of several international organizations occupying different roles, such as Marcocas, SEN, Pipeline Safety. Jose is an environmental engineer with a master in health and safety, specialist in safety, industrial hygiene, and economy. Master in energy business, master in corporate finance, and executive development program by IESE Business School. Well, I would like to welcome Jose Manuel de la Torre for his presentation.
Thank you, Vicios. Thank you also, Managing Force, for inviting me to this workshop and panel. First of all, I would like to know if you can see the screen before starting. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So, so I'm the senior manager of quality, health, safety, environments, also land permitting and stakeholder management in TAP. Now 5 years working in this company. So we have seen the previous presentation about the smart working or working from home. In this case, my presentation is also focused on in a company like us, in which we need to have people working in our facilities. We are managing gas infrastructure, so for guarantee the business continuity, there are critical roles that cannot be doing via home working. So we will present how TAP managed this situation in this during this pandemic. Before moving on that, minor information about TAP. What is TAP? So TAP is Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, is part of the Southern Gas Corridor. It's gas infrastructure that's connecting the Caspian Sea to the south of Italy for bringing gas. So TAP is the last the European leg of this Southern Gas Corridor, covering Greece, Albania, and Italy with 100 kilometers of offshore. And then TAP is connecting with the other company, part of the Southern Gas Corridor, which is TANAP, that is covering all Turkey. And finally, also SCPX, which is covering Georgia, Azerbaijan, and they're connecting with this offshore Caspian Sea. So the capacity of this TAP company is 10 billion BCM. This is the equivalent of giving energy to 7 million houses in Europe. We have also the possibility to expand our infrastructure to double, to 20 BCM. The total length of our pipeline is 878 kilometers, where 100 kilometers, 105 kilometers is offshore, with a diameter of the pipeline, which is 48 inches onshore and 36 inches offshore. So this project also, this company also allows this several interconnection with different other, projects, other markets to open or to bring gas energy to countries like Balkans, Bulgaria, or another one. So we have 6 shareholders, which is SOCAR, BP and SNAM with the 20%. Then Fluxys, which is the Belgian European TSO with 19%, and Agas, which is the European Spanish TSO, and finally Axpo with the 5% based in Switzerland. So our headquarters are based in Switzerland. I'm calling you, I'm presenting here since Canton of Zug, where our headquarters are located. So moving now to the presentation itself. So when we present updates, normally we focus on our 4 TAP countries, Greece, Albania, Switzerland, and Italy, but also we present the situation of Europe and world. So probably you are familiarized with this data, especially that we pass now the 40 million confirmed cases in Europe and more than 130 million in the world, with close to 1 million deaths also in Europe, close to also 3 million deaths in the world. In terms of all cases per million, at the moment, Italy is the country where we have a situation in the worst case that compared to the other countries, but also comparing apples with apples, we'd also like to see what are the number of tests per million, which is, you see Italy is close to 900,000 tests per million, where Albania is less than 200,000. So when I see Albania an incident rate of 440 cases per 100,000 compared to the 517 of Italy, of course, the situation in Albania gives us an indication which is even worse than in Italy. This is a normal presentation we do every Monday and Thursday to our crisis management team. You also probably are aware by the news that the situation, unfortunately, is not improving. These new UK and South Africa variants are creating more cases because they are more contagious, around 40% more contagious than the previous variant. We continue with new records in confirmed cases and fatalities in the world in general. And with this situation also, we continue with the restriction in countries. So the state of emergency is extending in some countries. We have also partial or total lockdowns, banning also the movement of people across the countries and regions. Travel restriction and imposing also quarantine or testing when people are entering the country, the mandatory use of masks, and also the home working compulsory when it is possible. Unfortunately, we are also facing problem with the vaccines. We know the situation of AstraZeneca, but also today we woke up also with this news that in some countries the Janssen vaccine has been stopped. So this unfortunately will create delays in having the immunity, and we also have we can cause delays also come back to the normality compared to the previous pandemic. So we've been now more than 1 year with this situation. So when we see also the trend, this is also what normally present our crisis management team. This is the information taken from the European Center Disease Prevention and Control. We see clearly what is the evolution of the different waves, and this is the evolution of the final weeks. So we see that we were coming from a decrease in the cases, but in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we are noticing again how the cases are increasing in the world, but also in Europe, unfortunately. And this is, as I mentioned before, basically because this new variant, which is more contagious than the previous one. As I said, also, we've been more than 1 year with this situation. So it's not only the impact of what this virus is causing directly, but also indirectly. You know? So one news that was published at the end of the last year was in Japan. More people died from suicide last month. We're talking about October 2020 than from COVID in all 2020. And this also gives us how is the impact now of this pandemic. People are losing their jobs, people are in quarantines, in isolation, in lockdown. We have seen many cases now of people that has been isolated for close than 1 month or even 20 days, 21 days in a hotel room in 4 walls with no light, natural light, and no any contact with other people. No? So this causes anxiety that these things probably will be discussed later on. No? But also we are in a pandemic that we don't know so much about this virus. So I remember when we started this pandemic, 23rd of February, it was the first crisis committee we did in TAP. It was a Sunday evening, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, after the day before we received information that the cases in Italy, in the north of Italy. From that date, company TAP is starting now to implement different protocols, different restrictions. The first one was to cancel any movement or travels from the personnel if it was not considered business critical. But at that time, I remember that even the World Health Organization were advising that there was not needed to have wear a mask. They were saying that even could create a false sense of protection. And now we are in a situation that it's not only necessary a mask, it's also necessary a FFP2 mask. So we see that how in 1 year, even the information we are having about how this virus is spreading and what is the effective protection measure are changing. This is an example that in Vienna International Airport, for example, there's now a requirement that FFP2 mask is mandatory. And even when you are using the Austrian Airlines, they are also accepting FFP2 masks and not surgical masks. So the main principle that TAP implemented was, health, welfare, and safety. Our personnel is a top priority. So national, local regulation guideline must be there as a minimum requirements. Normally, we try to be even more restrictive. And also try to be consistency in the different 4 countries where TAP is located. So we're seeing also that every month there are changes in the regulation, in the new decrees from the government, etc. So TAP has tried always since the beginning to be more restrictive and try to align the same protocol in the 4 countries and not to have many differences between one and another one. So this is something important to everybody be aligned about what is implemented and not having also different question from our employees as well, like why you are doing this in this country and not in my country, and I'm feeling less protected, but probably my government is not acting so fast than the other one. So we try to go apply the more restrictive measure as possible. Precautionary and also ethical approach is important point. Communication is key. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we are working very closely with our comms department. We have created a specific COVID email. We have done several town hall with all TAP company presented by our managing director about the situation in each country, the company measures, involving our company doctors to present or solve the different question and answer from our employees, and also implemented different campaigns adapting to this new situation, more virtual campaigns for comms and health and well-being programs. So for example, we are now providing yoga online session for our personnel. We are trying to adapt the new circumstances for the personnel who are also working at home in order to, they feel contact or still in contact with the company. So we are more focused on these well-being activities and programs with them. And the final point, main principle is diversity, which is we are recognizing also that, we are in a company that there are more than 30 nationalities. So there are also different, age, ethnicity, careers, disability, family, psychosocial. So we try to be also understand and be flexible with each of these personnel related to how they are managing the pandemic. So what we are doing since the beginning, I mentioned we established a crisis management team, but also an incident management team per country. So at the beginning, it was a daily meeting. Then we move on to two meetings per week. So we have every Monday and Thursday a meeting at corporate level, a country crisis management team, but also in Greece, in Albania, and Italy. We are having also an incident management team to discuss in more detail the situation in country. We also have a third-party company that validates our outbreak response plan, but also our cleaning protocols, and they are also performing audits to the site and taking some sampling in order to verify or validate that the disinfection comply with all the protocols, and there is no any indication that there is any microorganisms, let's say, in the area. So if this inspection is satisfactory, this company is providing us a stamp or certificate that this is a disinfection monitored by a third-party company. And also our offices are at the moment closed, so we are encouraging working from home if possible. So the present is more meant to accommodate business needs, so people who need to go for printing or scan some document, but in principle everybody are working from home. And these people who are requesting to go to office, they need to have also the approval of a small flexible working panel that we have a meeting every Friday in each country, where the personnel need to request first, to go to the office, and his line manager, LT member, has to approve, and finally there's my flexible working panel to really identify this necessary really to this person to go to the office. We are talking about top personnel, but also contractors. As I mentioned at the beginning, not everybody can work from home, so in our TAP sites, the activity has not stopped. So we are now in operational phase. So TAP entered into operation end of last year, but also we were able to manage and to close the project in the middle of the global pandemic. So you can imagine we had to mobilize people from one country to another, organizing a special authorization, organizing a strong protocol for testing, monitoring the entrance of these people in the facilities. So at the end, successfully, we were able to complete the project without stopping any activity, without having any case that could, put into risk the rest of the colleagues. And now that we are in an operational site phase, it's important to maintain the business continuity. So for this reason, also, TAP adopted a bubble approach, which is on site. We identify 3 bubbles. So the red bubble, the blue bubble, and the orange bubble. So the red bubble is the personnel who is on site. This is the personnel who are managing or are part of the emergency response team. So this is the personnel that when they enter in the bubble, they are for 10 or 14 days. This is depending on the country, fully isolated. So these people, before entering this bubble, they are tested, maximum 48 hours. If they are tested negative, they enter in the bubble. And for this period, they go to the site during normal working hours. When they finish their day, they go to a hotel, but in this hotel, they are also isolated, so they don't have any contact with other personnel. They are receiving the food and dinner and breakfast in their rooms. And as soon as these 10, 14 days are over, they enter now in the new bubble, which are resting. They are 14 days also resting. And after this resting period, they are entered now in the new bubble, which is working remotely. So at the end, they are 14 days at site, 14 days resting, 14 days working remotely. This is a system we have to implement since the end of last year, when the situation in countries continue, not improving, and we enter now in operational phase. And as I said before, we need to guarantee 24/7 emergency response. It's working really well. We had already cases on site, and because of this bubble approach, these personnel are fully, let's say, isolated and not in contact with other personnel. So even when we are doing the contact tracing, they are not even identifying a high risk, as they never were in contact with other personnel. So our principle for this bubble approach, it's this on-call emergency team is fully isolated, as I mentioned before, no contact with other personnel. That could be other project team or commissioning or vendors or other personnel on site like security. So if it's necessary to take any contact with other third party on site, this is done by the orange bubble. So it's not by the red bubble. It's the personnel who are doing the smart working from home. In case that they would necessary to have any contact with people on site, they go to the site and they provided the support to these third parties. There is also a physical separation and contact. So these employees in the bubble, they have work in different areas. So in the admin building, they don't have contact with other personnel. They have also separate welfare facilities, toilets or kitchen. Even inside the bubble, they are requested to minimize any physical contact with them. So I try to avoid more than 15 minutes, less than 2 meters, in order to not be considered high risk, to in case that we could have a false negative when they are entering, or the virus needs an incubation period of 5 days. So there could be a probability lower, but it's still there, that you are testing negative 48 hours before entering on site, and then you are developing the virus. Also in the entrance of this facility, they do this PCR test, as I mentioned before, but also on site, anyone who enters in the site, not only this person in the red bubble, they are doing the self-temperature and self-assessment screening before entering on the facility. If they have some fever, they are not allowed to enter. Even we are requesting these people to do this temperature screening before leaving their homes, not necessary to arrive to the site. But also we have a typical question that, have you been in contact with a confirmed case? Have you present some symptoms during the last days, etc.? If one of these questions is yes, this person also is not allowed to enter in the facility. In terms of ventilation, also we are not allowing the recirculation of the air. Also natural ventilation is something that we frequently follow. Catering also is something that is just provided by lunch boxes, no contact with the supplier. Also, the mandatory.
Jose, we're reaching the end of time, so you may speed up. And
it's the last slide now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So we are also applying the mandatory use of the mask in all sites. So it's FP2 in everybody, but also the social distance, use of hand sanitizer, video conference. As I said before, this person on the bubble is in hotels. So before allowing this hotel, there were also an auditing, internal audit by security and QHSE team, including also the verification of the protocol that this hotel were applying about the cleaning, disinfection, air conditioning, temperature check, use of masks, etc. And these people are also isolated from the rest of occupants and any interaction with the hotel. So these people are not allowed to get, let's say, after work to go for drinks, etc. in the lobby of the hotel. And also breakfast and dinners is delivered in the room service. Commuting also, we have had many cases of different cases in the company with the drivers. So it's important also controlling the drivers because they are exposed to many people. So in this case also our personnel are not allowed to have interaction with them. And finally, with these 10-14 days that these people are in the bubble, we also create a strong health and well-being program to support these people for these 14 days. So as they are in the room, hotel, etc., we are providing them some allowance, let's say, to having Netflix, subscription, but also personal trainers or yoga, or they want to do any training, all these kind of things in order to support in those the cons and well-being activity, because we realize mental health is also key when people are working this bubble approach on that. So this is the top let's say case in which in comparison with other companies that they can promote the smart working. In our case, for key personnel, we had to implement all this system in place in order to guarantee the continuity of the service and also the health and safety of our personnel and contractors. So thank you very much. I think the question is at the end of this panel. So thank you for.
Thank you, Jose. That was the top case study, a very interesting and integrated protocol to protect the spread of pandemic. Any questions are welcome. I will keep informed in case we have questions that are coming, Jose. Now we are moving to the next lecturer, who is Petros Hatzidakis.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
We are fine, Petros. You are a senior associate at Ioannis Vasardanis and Partners since March 2015, you say. Mr. Hatzidakis was previously an associate at Kristallidis and Associates law firm, while he started his career in MP Legal, 2008. Petros has significant experience in civil and commercial law litigation, representing clients in front of courts of all instances. He has extensive experience in disputes arising out of contractual interpretation, and he has successfully represented clients in cases involving both Greek and foreign law, as he has common law background, having graduated from the University of Wales, Swansea, and holding a master's degree in international business law from the University of Exeter. He regularly advises clients who are acting in the sector of construction and infrastructure, hotel and catering, intellectual property and information technology, and as well as sale and goods, while he also advises private individuals or issues related to property and contract law. What is teleworking? This is the topic, in fact. Is it a blessing or a course of businesses and employees? The legal issues that have arisen, work time and personal and business data and duration of the working day and expenses of the teleworking employee. These will be the topics. Is standby time, working time, etc. All these are the topics that Petros will share with us now. Petros.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hatzikostas. I'd like to thank Management Force for this honor and this opportunity to talk about this legal subject. So please excuse me, I'm going to be the boring one here today. We're going to talk about law. I'll try to make it as short as possible.
You have 20 minutes, Petros.
Okay, thanks. I know that.
These are 1,200 seconds.
Okay. Can you see the first slide?
Yes, you can see it.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about law issues when working remotely. Everyone, as Mr. De La Torre said before, is affected by COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic that keeps us home and obliges us to work from there. There are many legal issues arising, as every part of our social life and our working life has legal implications. So working from home created a new situation that we all have to get accustomed to. The issues that we're going to talk about is, what is teleworking? Is it something new? Is it something that came to our lives because of COVID-19, or was it something that was here before? Is it a blessing or a curse for businesses and employees? We hear people saying that it made their lives difficult. It made them pay more money for things. Both employers and employees seem to hate this new situation, but is it really that bad? The legal issues that have arisen, work time against personal time. Should I be online all day in order to react to what when my manager calls me, or when my clients want me to be there for them? Personal and business data that I use when I work from home, that I store in my personal computer or in storage media in my house. Duration of the working day and expenses of the teleworking employee. How long should I work? Should employees work longer than they used to when they're working from their office? And who should bear the expenses for that? Who should bear for the computer? Who should pay for the computer that I use and for the USB that I use? A thorny legal issue, which is standby time, working time. If I leave the office, but I should be expecting emails or telephone calls until late in the night while I am home eating my dinner or playing with my children, should I be expecting a call, and should that be calculated as working time? Issues that they demand quick response from employers, such as privacy and confidentiality of information that their employees use. Security, when I work from home, the employer may have no control anymore to my surroundings and to the place that I work. But my employer is still responsible for my security and for my health and safety while I perform my duties from home. How can he do that? Calculation working time, that's a very difficult task because I should not work less because I am paid to do the same amount of work and the same quality of work. But at the same time, if I work more, maybe I am entitled to more remuneration for the work that I produce. So yeah, employees' right to telework. In the end of the day, it is a right of the employee to telework and not an obligation that came to our lives because of COVID-19. And is smart working the future? I tell you this, I'm going to be a little bit unpleasant to both employers and employees, but this is the law. Please don't shoot the messenger. So what is teleworking? Article 2 of the European Framework Agreement on Telework of 2002 writes that telework is a form of organizing and or performing work using information technology in the context of an employment contract or of an employment relationship, where work, which could also be performed at the employer's premises, is carried out from those premises on a regular basis. There is a similar definition in Greek law. Teleworking was here before COVID-19. Many people don't know that. They thought that this came to our life as a consequence of COVID-19. But at least in Greece, there was a law since 2010, and I'm sure that there is similar laws in other countries regulating working from home. This law in Greece provided that teleworking should be of a voluntary nature. There should be an agreement between employer and employee. The employer could not demand the employee to work from home. The obligation for teleworking should be in the employee's job description, or he might be required to work from home at a later stage, but always with his or her consent. The employee can accept or refuse the offer to telework. And telework, we should stress that, is real work. The teleworker should work equal hours and get equal pay for the work that he or she produces. Then came COVID-19, and at least in this country, it made the decision of who teleworks a decision of the employer. He could ask his personnel to, actually, it's a decision of the employer to make 40% of his personnel to work from home. The employer is to decide now contrary to the previous law, who is working from home, but still has to respect the law. The law provides the guidelines of who is to work from home in order to assist the employer in his decision of who to ask to work from home. At the same time, refusal to telework is still not a valid ground for the dismissal of an employee. You cannot say you don't want to telework, so you have to be sacked. So is telework a good or a bad thing? We hear people mentioning only the bad things about teleworking. They say that it's a terrible thing. The employers, they say that, okay, I pay my employees and they stay at home doing nothing, and I still have to pay them the same salaries that I used to pay them before COVID-19. I have to provide them with all necessary equipment. The law says that I am responsible for them having a PC, a laptop, a mobile phone that they use while they work. I am responsible that they have a reliable Wi-Fi connection so that they can perform the work that they can perform when they are at the office. The employers complain that they are no longer able to control the data that employees use, because now they have to store this data at their personal computers or at their mobile phones or their personal means of storage. And it's becoming harder for companies to control how this data is safely kept by the employees. And employers are still responsible for the employees' health and safety while they work at home. When I work at the office, my employer has control of my surroundings and knows that he provides me with a safe environment for me to do the work, while at home, children might be playing next to me, or my wife might be cooking in the room next to me. And it's not very easy for the employer to safeguard that the surroundings and make sure that my health and safety is not jeopardized when I work from home. Employees, they agree with that. They have their own arguments, but they agree that teleworking is a terrible thing. They say that they have to work while at the same time they have to take care of their children. They may having their school lessons through the internet, or their wife should be working from another PC at the same time, and they should have a very, very reliable internet connection in order to do that. They say that there's no free time. The whole day is a working day. I used to come back from work at a certain time every day. Now people call me anytime and they ask me to do things for work while I should be home relaxing. The issue about having a reliable Wi-Fi connection and asking the employee to be online all day. He has to keep his equipment up to date. He has to make sure that connection is reliable, and he feels that he is responsible if anything goes wrong, because he will be asked to apologize for that to his manager and to his employer. And finally, he stores the information in his personal computer, in his mobile phone, no longer in the company's computer, no longer in the company's storage means. So he has another worry, keeping himself and company data safe. But telework is not a bad idea after all. Many many employers have not thought of that, but teleworking gives them the opportunity to hire a qualified employee who doesn't live in their city. There are many people out there who are very well qualified, who can offer added value to the company, but unfortunately, they don't live in the same city. They cannot be hired in order to work in the offices of the company. They can be hired in order to telework and produce far from the place where the premises of the company are, but still produce for the company. Teleworking means that expenses can be reduced. The company can pay less rent. Employees of the company make less telephone calls or use less gas to keep the premises of the company warm in the winter. Employees avoid time wasted in commuting. Normally, in big cities, employees need half an hour or more to get to the place of work. Now there's more time for them and for their personal needs, and time they can dedicate to something else. Employees can take a break when they are working from home to cook lunch or pick up their children from school. Plus, it is good for the environment. We don't have to use our cars every day. This benefits the world that we live in. And now the legal issues, the boring stuff. Work time against personal time. How do I keep the personal data that I use and the business data, the information related with the company that I work for, how do I keep this information safe? The duration of the working day, which is a very complicated issue and a very difficult issue for both employers and employees. The expenses that the employer has to bear in order for his or her employees to be working far from home. No matter if you work from home, if the employee works far from the office, he has to work 5 or 6 days here in Greece because this is what the law requires. He has to take a break. He cannot work for a period longer than 6 hours without a break. This is true when he or she works at the office, and it must be true when he or she works from home. You must be paid more if you work more than the limit the law sets. Teleworking is real work. Nobody should expect the employee to work more time than the law requires him to. And employees should get 11, or whatever the law in your country says, hours of real rest before the next shift. This means that if I have to go to work at 9 o'clock tomorrow, I should leave at 10 o'clock in the night at the latest in order to abide by the requirement of the law. And I have a right to disconnect. I have a right to not answer to calls, not answer to emails during this time, because these 11 hours should be hours of real rest. According to the law, it's the employer's responsibility to keep his employees and his business data safe. He has to make sure that health and safety is not in danger, as it was the case in the office. He is responsible to keep his premises safe and healthy for the workers that work there. But he has the same obligation for employees who work from home. This can be very difficult. It's not an easy task to make sure that the employee who works from home keeps for himself a safe environment where he works. But unfortunately for the employers, it is their responsibility to do that. Employer has to make sure that employees' equipment is fit for purpose and up to date, allowing employees to perform their duties from home. An employee may say that my computer is very old, or I cannot afford a very, very good Wi-Fi connection. Employer has to provide that to the teleworking employee. We come now to some issues demanding quick response from employers, from companies. We should be aware of privacy and confidentiality rules. It would be advisable if we could sign an NDA with a teleworking employee. Let him know what kind of information he's handling, and let me know that he's expected to handle this information confidentially, and he has an obligation to destroy this information after the use he makes, or return this information to the sender. We have to make sure that we can retrieve this information from teleworkers at any moment. And explain to teleworkers that just because work is performed on a home computer doesn't mean that it's not susceptible to being monitored or inspected by the employer. There is a very thin line there between the privacy of the employee who uses the same computer in order to communicate with his girlfriend via WebEx, or let his children play a video game, and at the same time he uses the same device in order to work. But law allows the employer to check this device every now and then in order to see that the information sent by the company is safely stored and that is used in a manner that does not jeopardize the safety of information, personal information of clients, of people involved with the company, and company information, trade secrets, and other things like that. Working from home, so it doesn't mean that you stop being an employee. You have the same rights and the same obligations as if you were working from the office. Security should be top priority. The access to company information should be secure. And how can this be done? It can be done by encryption, passwords, network firewalls, and other tools that can be used to protect the information that they are now sent to devices far in another neighborhood, in another city, maybe in another country where the teleworker lives. Employer must restrict the use of personal devices. It can be dangerous when the employee uses his mobile phone in order to perform work for the company. The employer must make sure that it operates from a secure server or uses a virtual private network. And he should make sure, because at the end of the day, liability remains with the employer. If anything gets lost, if information gets destroyed, cannot be retrieved anymore, the employee's device is hacked or gets a virus, is the employer that is liable against the client or the state. Equal pay for equal work. As I said before, working remotely doesn't mean that you should work less or you should work less effectively. So company is responsible for any unexpected overtime wages. It is expected from you to work as much as you've been working from the office. The company should establish a clear and fair mechanism to track working hours.
Petro, we are reaching the end of this time, so you can come up. You are a lawyer. You talk a lot.
I'll try to make it short.
Yeah.
Work from home is not inferior work. The employer should make sure it is real work, so that he shouldn't pay overtime wages for work that should be done within the legal limit of the legal time limit. Is standby time a working time? I'll make this the last part of my presentation because we're running out of time, as Mr. Hadjikostas said. This is a very important issue and a very thorny legal issue. Should standby time be regarded as working time? What are the factors to be taken into account? I'm waiting for an email until late at night. I should answer to phone calls until very late, or even Saturdays or Sundays. Am I working? What are the factors to be taken into account? Who is this man? This man is Rudy Majak, Belgian firefighter, who was told that he can leave work at 5 o'clock, but he should be expecting calls until 9 or 10 at night, and he is expected to return to the fire station within 8 minutes. What did the European Court of Justice say? It said that the obligation to remain physically present at the place determined by the employer and the requirement to reach the place of work within a short period very significantly restrict a worker's opportunities for other activities. You don't leave him enough time and space to do other things, like go play football with his friends or go out on a date with his girlfriend, if you demand him to be back in 8 minutes. Therefore, under such circumstances, standby time should be considered as working time and be paid as such. Employers are still liable for employees' health and safety when they work from home. Specific policy regarding work-related injuries that may occur in a teleworking employee's home is needed, as courts in most cases have considered home locations to be an extension of the workplace and held employers liable for the accidents that happened at the employee's house. Telework should not discriminate. Every employee should be given the opportunity to telework. Allowing only female or junior employees to telework may be seen as discriminatory and may be the reason for imposing a penalty to employers. Teleworking is here to stay. Teleworking once or twice per week seriously boosts employee morale. It should be seen as a good thing. And other things, such as allowing employees to have a word on the appearance of the working space or casual Fridays and stuff like that, they boost employee morale, they make employees happier, and a consensus must be reached between employers and employees in order for both parties to be happy. I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Petros.
This is all I have to say.
Thank you very much. We could have endless discussions on these issues that you have raised, Petros, but we have to proceed to the next topic. I would say, however, that I see that we are moving from the so-called entrepreneurship to the intrapreneurship. That is, the employee is becoming sort of or part of the employer. And we are moving from the work time schedule, let's say, to the work results, maybe. But okay, I think that this we could discuss later if we have time. But I think it's time we move to the next speaker, who is Tim Trenkenza.
Correct.
Trenkenza.
Yes.
We are in a period of considerable change in occupational safety and health, Tim. in relation to demographic change, technological change, changes in work organization, and the need for sustainable development considering issues such as the impact of climate change. The global pandemic has in some areas accelerated the pace of change. And telework is one of these areas. Telework can change the hazards and the risks faced by the worker, for better or worse. In particular, when considering workers' musculoskeletal and psychosocial health. One thing that has not changed is the need for employers to manage the safety and health of their workers, but how they may do this in the telework context changes. Tim Trengenza is Senior Network Manager at the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work, the so-called EU OSHA, where he is responsible for the external relations of the agency to international organizations and non-member states. Prior to taking up this post, Tim was a project manager at the agency developing practical solutions addressing hazards and risks in the workplace. He started his health and safety career as a labor inspector with the United Kingdom's Health and Safety Executive, HSE. Tim Trengenza.
Thank you very much. I will just start my presentation. I hope you can see that. Yes. And I would say first, thank you very much to Petros. He's made my presentation an awful lot easier.
Yeah.
Thank you to that especially. And I think we will be closely aligned. Greetings from Bilbao, where it is sunny, and my background is actually close to Bilbao, where I live. This is a transporter bridge that was built a century ago to allow the big ships to come up the river to unload coal and steel in the city. Okay, this is a presentation that is actually backwards. I'm starting with my summary and I'll work forward and tell you about me and my organization at the end. So if you only need to look at one slide and remember one thing, it's this slide. And what I'm saying here is when we look at teleworking and occupational safety and health, we have to see it as something different from traditional health and safety management. Remote occupational safety and health management is needed for remote working. Simple as that. It's a different, has to be done differently. And telework is different to site-based work, even if the tasks the worker actually does is the same. You've moved the person out from one work environment into a second work environment, and that changes how the work is done and the hazards and risks faced. Three key issues I highlight in this presentation and should be considered in the safety and health management. First, musculoskeletal harm, preventing harm to the back, the wrists, the neck, your musculoskeletal system. The second is the management of psychosocial issues, psychosocial risk factors in the worker, especially, but not only just during this pandemic. And the third issue, which links in perhaps to both of these and is very dynamic, is this boundary between work and private life. Okay, well, I'm pretty much going to skip this slide because Petros very kindly explained what telework is, going to the European Agreement on Telework. When we look at health and safety law at European level, there is a series of directives. 89391 EEC is usally called the Framework Directive, and then it has a number of daughter directives addressing everything from chemical substances, carcinogens, manual handling, and so on. And these directives, which are transposed into every member state, basically say the employer is responsible for the health and safety of their workers, all hazards and risks. And to manage these, it's a question of risk assessment and prevention. This is, in two sentences, that's what the law says. And what a worker is defined. Interestingly, it excludes domestic servants. This is, again, an issue for discussion at the moment. The reason for the exclusion primarily, I think, is because you have the issue that relates to teleworkers, is that the Labour Inspectorate, how does that inspect workers in a private property? So it's a question of enforcement. So in the original directive and in the legislation, domestic servants were specifically excluded, but teleworkers are not domestic servants. I've stressed that. In addition to the European directives, these provide the minimum standards that's transposed into the member states, and there may be specific national legislation that makes more specific or tighter requirements in the health and safety law. These specific national legislation must follow the European directives, which are the minimum standards. And I understand that, for example, in regard to telework, in some states, they differentiate between different types of telework. I heard that in some states, they differentiate between what you might term permanent telework, where the worker is set up and working from home, and occasional telework, where the worker is may do an occasional day out of the office working. The fundamental legislation remains the same, but there are more specific national issues relating to other topics like who provides what and the working conditions, some working conditions, but that's very much at the national level. Okay, when we talk about health and safety management in context of telework, one of the issues is that a positive thing for OSH management is that you have the potential for using new tools. There was a speaker yesterday talking about this. And just to give one example, here at the agency, a year ago, more than a year ago now, we were told on the Tuesday that on the Friday, we were all being sent home. Initially for a 2-week period, we thought. And we were all sent home and had to start working from home. As part of our OSH management process for the staff at the agency, we have done an online risk assessment. This was mandatory by the agency. And in addition to that, there was also an optional well-being approach, so that we complied with our norms for risk assessment and prevention online, but via an online medium, and then we also supported that by the well-being, which was not obligatory. We see, as previously mentioned, that the loss of a direct control of a work environment is a difficult challenge for employers and for safety and health managers. You can't come in and inspect a workplace to check for ergonomics, or you can't come in and check for other hazards and risks in the workplace when the person is coming from home. There are the privacy issues discussed by the previous speakers. And there is this big challenge, this big issue, which is about remote working and supervision. And this, the word I would use here is trust. The issues raised by Petrov, he's sitting at home watching Netflix, or he's micromanaging me, he's calling me all hours of day and night. If there is trust between the manager or supervisor and the worker, these things don't happen. It's where there's trust, where the manager is confident the worker is doing their job, and the worker is confident the manager's got his back and they can talk when there are issues. That's when things work well. That's when teleworking benefits everybody. But when you lose that trust or don't have that trust, that's when you get the micromanagement, the calls every 5 minutes saying, have you done that? Have you checked that email? No, you can't leave the desk until that email goes. Or the worker going, why should I? Why should I be working extra? Why should I be putting in the extra mile when I get treated like this? So the challenge in occupational safety and health management in general, and the management of remote workers in general, is establishing that trust between the worker and employer. it's a collaborative venture, if you like. And we miss that face-to-face contact. I think one of the things we've all learned from this pandemic is we have lost that ability to shake hands, to hug, to kiss, to touch, to talk face-to-face with people. And that's a big loss. Zoom's great, fine. Like MS Teams, we do it all the time, yeah. But yeah, would I rather be here or would I rather be in Athens doing this talk face-to-face? I'd rather be in Athens any day. That loss is a real loss and we have to accept it's there. Again, I'll give an example about the trust and how it worked at the agency. I use us as a good practice example here. We got sent home. The first day everyone's at home, we had a staff meeting, online staff meeting on MS Teams. It was for many of us the first time we'd used MS Teams. So it took us about an hour for everyone to get connected. And it was a lot of fun. We're 60 people. And eventually we're all connected. And the director comes on and pretty much the first thing the director says is, I know you'll do your best to carry on doing your work as best you can. I know some of you are in difficult situations with young people or two of you working from home or whatever, but I know that you'll do your best and we'll be flexible and we'll work together. And that just that statement, that leadership is so important. And I have colleagues here who have young kids and their partner is also working from home. And they've been working 7 till 10, looking after the kids 10 till 2 while their partner works. Then they'll do some more work in the afternoon and then the partner works. And they split the time up like that. And we scheduled meetings and we scheduled our work around that and everybody's particular local needs. So it can be done, but it needs that trust and it needs that flexibility by the management and by the worker. Coming more specifically to musculoskeletal risk factors, I mean, this is the easy bit. We know musculoskeletal disorders, they're a massive problem in Europe at the best of times. I think they're the #1 cause of work-related lost time work that we see. And the musculoskeletal problems can be from physical work or it can be from office environment. There's many issues there. And we see different factors that impact on this. Of course, fast-paced work, repetitive movements, think about supermarket checkout people. This is obviously something here. Poor lighting, cold working environments. These impact on your musculoskeletal health. And of course, the prolonged sitting or standing in awkward or static postures. So all these things can be present in the person's home environment. It depends on their work. It depends on their situation. It depends on where the flat is or whatever. Whatever. Also, there are issues about the organization and psychosocial risk factors. And I would stress there is a big interaction between psychosocial risk factors and musculoskeletal risk factors. So work, where people have high work demands and low autonomy, we see more likelihoods of musculoskeletal disorders. Yeah, when you have to do really high-speed work with a lack of breaks, again, this is this fast and repetitive. And if you've got to do long hours on shift work, again, we see issues there. And it is the employer has the legal duty to manage the health and safety of the worker and has to address these factors. Yes, there are individual risk factors that have to be taken into account, but it is the employer's fundamental duty to manage the health and safety of their workers. And this is where the flexibility and the management comes together to ensure that the worker is doing their job as safely and healthily as they can in the home environment. So what can you do about it? Well, some steps are quite straightforward. Training workers on how to set up their workstation at home. It'd be interesting, can't do a poll on this, I don't think, but it'd be interesting to know how many people attending this conference have been told how to actually properly set up their workstation ergonomically at home with the table and chairs they've got at home with their home computer and their mobile? Who's been told how to do it properly? Just a question. I mean, what equipment is the home worker using? It's all very well that in an office environment, the office will order so many chairs, ergonomic chairs, and so many desks. We've got sit-stand desks here in the office, and then they buy in and put them in here. Great, and their computers come in, and we use these. What's happening at home? What are you expecting the worker to use in terms of chair, in terms of desk, in terms of mouse, input device, in terms of screens, whatever? And again, I'll give good practice what the agency has done. The agency has said, okay, you're all at home, you know what you need. The whole thing is you have to adapt the work to the worker, not the other way around. So my employer has said, okay, there is a ceiling, but you go and buy what you need for your home environment to work, and we will reimburse you. And this is very simply adapting the work to the worker. We can't do normal procurement in these times. So some colleagues have gone out and bought an ergonomic chair because they were sitting on their dining room chair to do their work. And this is a recipe for disaster. So that the worker has gone and said, okay, this is the type of chair I need. It's below the ceiling. I buy the chair. I put the bill into the work, and I'm reimbursed. And this applies to having a second screen at home, for example, or for having a new mouse, because there's one thing to have a mouse to do watch Netflix, another thing to have a mouse to do repetitive data input. So this is one way of addressing the work equipment situation. Managing your tasks, how about ensuring the systems you want the worker to work on actually can function on domestic Wi-Fi? Yeah, if you've got a high-tech system, that's fine, but if you're shifting massive amounts of data, there's an issue there. It might not work on domestic Wi-Fi. So this is where we come back to, the employer should be ensuring that works. If it doesn't work, some other method has to be found. The management, regular communication with worker, agreed at a rate that's agreed between the manager and the worker. Yeah, it depends on your job, it depends on the tasks you're actually undertaking. It may vary even day to day. But there has to be this workload management. Yeah, have you got enough? Have you got enough work to do? Have you got too much work to do? Have you got some peaks and deadlines? Yeah, all this has to be discussed, because if you talk about it, you can normally find a solution. Do this first, then do this. This is okay, this is less important. We can put this back to next week, whatever it is. And then be holistic in your approach. It's not just focusing on one thing. You have to have this holistic approach to health and ensuring the social interaction as well. Okay, moving on, psychosocial factors. I have here a simple model we use at the agency for when we talk about work-related stress, and some people are confused or not sure about what we mean by work-related stress. So what we have typically are a series of psychosocial risks: poor work design, poor management, unfavorable social context. This can include bullying, harassment, whatever. You then have work-related stress, which is where the demands at work are beyond the worker's perceived capacity to cope with them. And this produces in turn the negative outcomes that could be emotional, cognitive, behavioral, physical, mental ill health. So that's a very, very simple model. And we need to think about how that applies to the home working, the telework context. What can we control in that psychosocial risks? How can we control those? What can we do? We don't, it's not one, there's never one single cause of work-related stress. In my experience, it's multi-causal, and that normally means you have to have multifactorial solutions. And I will stress here, it's the work, not the worker. It's in the directive, the 89391 directive, that work has to adapt to the worker, not the other way around. And you manage work-related stress as you would manage any other health and safety issue. You have your hierarchy of control, starting with elimination and then going through substitution and so on with your risk assessment and your preventive measures. You can only do that if you're actually having a dialogue between worker and employer, whether it's a frontline supervisor, whether it's health and safety manager or whoever. As I said, most causal factors of work-related stress are usually organizational and they're usually multi-causal, which means that though you have to have organizational and multi-component interventions for prevention. And for goodness sake, treat the cause, not the symptoms. If you buy magazines, often you'll see magazines, whether it's Men's Health or Women's Health or whatever it is. Are you suffering from stress? Here are 10 solutions to your stress problems. And it'll be, depends if it's for men or women, light a candle, have a beer, buy a dog, whatever it is. I saw one, the suggestion was do the ironing. I'm not sure about that. But these are just treating the symptoms. That's the Band-Aid. It's not addressing the causes of the psychosocial problems. And what you have to have is leadership and commitment from the top. This applies whether it's for telework or for work in the office, but this is fundamental. So, as mentioned earlier, the right to disconnect is this term which is used where we've had this increasing blurring between private life and work life. And it's a hot topic. I'll tell you now, it's a hot topic, and there's discussion about legislation going on in various countries around Europe. If it goes too far, we can be talking at it as a psychosocial risk factor or even harassment of the worker by the manager. You know, if your manager is phoning you at 5 o'clock in the morning, at 10 o'clock at night, and micromanaging you out throughout the day and demanding over a course of time, we're looking into it, in effect, what we're seeing as harassment. Now, at the moment, there's no European framework, legal framework directly defining and regulating this, but there is existing legislation relating to working time, as previously mentioned, and there is, of course, the health and safety law, which includes the management of psychosocial risks. But this is a very fluid area. And again, the best way of managing this is having a discussion and an agreement between the manager and the worker. How do we talk to each other? When do we talk to each other? And coming up to an agreement which is suitable for both parties. Okay, just to finish off then, I work at EUOSHA, the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work. We are the Europe's information agency for safety and health at work. We have information on 25 languages, including on the future of work, and we have ongoing projects relating to telework in particular. We're also looking at everything from platform economy, 3D printing, but actually our main action at the moment, we're in fact doing a European-wide campaign. It's the world's largest campaign on musculoskeletal disorder prevention. This is picking up a whole series of issues here, including telework, but also including working with chronic diseases, carrying on working when you are ill with musculoskeletal disorders. There's a huge range of resources in there. In, as I say, the 25 languages, even we have a cartoon character who doesn't speak, so you can transfer that into non-EU language countries. We have, of course, what are called focal points in every member state. So that's 27 at the moment, plus the EEA EFTA countries, Iceland, Switzerland, Norway, for example. And these focal points are also in the Western Balkans and Turkey. We have them in, for example, North Macedonia, Albania, Serbia, Turkey, across the region. We're just establishing one in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So these addresses and contact details for these people are on our website. So if you want to talk at national level to our people, you can contact them. As I say, we put all our information free of charge online. So if we published it, it's there somewhere on our website. And I will finish there. Thank you very much for your contributions, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Tim. You are really a very good team, the three of you here, and I think that there are very interesting questions. I'm not sure if I can share my screen. Yes, I can do this. I tried to collect all the questions here for Jose, Tim, and Petros, but I suppose that for Tim and Petros are more or less, I mean, both can discuss these topics here. So I will not read the questions for you. Of course, I think you have already seen these questions. We have just, let's say, 5 minutes because, in fact, we are run out of time. It's 12:50 is the end of the session, but we have a tolerance until 12:55. So you see the questions, you have seen them already. You may say something about this.
Okay, if I may.
Many questions to you and the team as well, because it's the same topic.
Let me try and answer this to Milan. I can't see his surname now.
Petkovsky.
Where is it?
Petkovsky.
Milan Petkovsky.
Petkovsky.
He asks, can I see the question? Okay, yeah. Okay, how to produce relevant risk assessment when the working post is outside of work premises and only way to enter it is if the occupant invite assessor. Very difficult issue. Like you cannot ask the employee to allow you to get into his house in order for you to assess the circumstances. What is needed is what Mr. Tregenza said, is honesty. Honesty by the employee and the employer to be proactive. These two things combined are the solution. The employer should be there in order to guide, to show how it is done, and the employee should trust and be honest about what is the situation in his home. And this is the only solution, actually. Yeah, legislation may pass in the future and may regulate things in a stricter manner, but honesty is what is needed. Trust is what is needed at this stage. I think Mr. Tregenza agrees.
Absolutely. I mean, we are seeing new online risk assessment tools continually coming on available. I mean, we have online interactive risk assessment tools for from the agency, which are developed in national languages as well. I suspect we are pushing more and more, and this will be a topic which will be picked up increasingly in these risk assessment tools, because we were seeing a trend to teleworking before the pandemic. It's just that that trend has taken off. And yes, it'll settle down once the pandemic eventually, we hope, subsides, but we will see a lot more people working from home, working from other locations, and this issue is not going to go away.
Okay.
Mr. Asterios Lialios, who's an old friend, and I say hi to him, asks, how can one actually keep track of the real working time of an employee? Again, this is not the easiest of tasks, but there are, of course, tools. But what is most important is honesty again. I can pretend that I'm working till late at night while I'm watching series on Netflix. No one can knock my door and ask me to open and see what I'm doing. But if my employer trusts me and I trust him, then we can come to a solution. We can understand each other and see that I should work during my shift, and I should really work and not pretend that I'm working.
I think that we are coming back Petros, to what I have said earlier,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
maybe we count the results
Yeah.
of the work rather than the time when the employee was.
This is a very big
Exactly.
discussion that will not end.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Which is more important, the work the worker does or the time the worker spends doing the work? Is the output is the important thing. Whatever that output is, it's not how long it takes that worker to do the output. It's what the output is. And if that output is to quality, if it's to whatever, that
So it
should be the focus.
Yeah, exactly. We count the quality and the output rather than the quantity, without maybe the proper output.
I think this is where we are moving, honestly.
Yeah.
With this pandemic is accelerating these things. So, you know, there are companies that have been working for years to implement this teleworking. And with this pandemic, we need to move from Friday to Monday to have teleworking implemented, no? So this is a point that I'm pretty sure in future we'll see people working in the south of Spain or, you know, Greece or any other country working for other facilities far away, because at the end, what the companies are going to demand is the results, not where you are located or if you are working on Saturdays, Sundays, or you know, it's you have a target to do. You need to follow this, complete with this target, and you organize your time as you prefer. And this is, I think that this is where we are moving.
Yeah,
it's a matter
and
of
I
each person to
see
organize.
that we are moving to employees with more responsibility, and to employees who would be intrapreneurships, meaning entrepreneurship within their own company, maybe. Employees with more responsibility. This, I think, is what we will see soon.
Yes, but also in terms of the managers to organize better their team, because now
sure.
they are
Sure.
managers
more effective
that
managers.
exactly,
Yes, very
that
correct. Yeah,
they are managers that they say, no, I have my team there from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I feel happy with this. No, probably one of them is really working and the other one is more relaxed watching news. No, so now it's something that each manager would really need to know the workload associated to each of them and what you're really demanding as the outcome of the activity they are performing. No? I think this is key as well, the way of organizing the work.
Well, Tim, Petros, Jose, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a very interesting session. We really enjoyed it, I think. I'm sure that our participants enjoyed as well with their questions and being here active with you. So now it's time we close the session and be back in the next session after our break for lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.